So the sermon topic, how true parents are the answer. Um, First, I want to acknowledge, Reverend Du gave a wonderful sermon last Sunday about Hyojung and faith, such an important topic. So I was really thinking about that a lot. But then Mrs. Du, she brought up the point that people have questions about the current situation taking place in our country, the issue of racism, uh, what happened with the police. And so I thought, okay, I'll share about that. And then the more I looked into it, the more I thought, okay, I'm just going to focus on that particular topic. So I hope to share some insights about the current situation that I hope might help you as you reflect upon it and as you're looking for answers and how to give hope and how to give guidance to people. And I really believe, and based upon my prayer and study, especially this last week, that true parents are truly the answer. Right? So this is going to a little bit be a kind of an educational sermon. And so I hope you can be patient with me. All right. So let's see here. Here's the first Bible quote. 1 John 3:8-9. Everyone who commits sin is a child of the devil, for the devil has been sinning from the beginning. So what we saw take place on video, the terrible, kind of horrific death of George Floyd, we can understand that this was truly evil and that this is a sin against God, against God's children. And it brought a lot of pain, I think, to everybody who's watched that video, to see someone who's helpless, who's handcuffed, and slowly their life is taken away when it didn't have to happen. And out of that, there emerged a lot of protests, as you know, and people have been going out to the streets, and they've been really looking for justice. I believe that's one of the main themes of many of the protests is they're looking for real justice in this country. So here's a quote from True Mother from her memoir, Mother of Peace, page 130. It is important to build memorials and educate people about historical wrongs. Still, the higher priority is to release the bitter anguish and anger harbored by those who came before us and who suffered and died unjustly. So reading this quote was quite powerful for me. And I realized that we really do need to acknowledge the sins of the past. And this is very much a part of our faith and the teachings of the divine principle. How important it is to reconcile past grievances, past injustices that have been put upon other people. So that's what I'd like to talk about here. And I want to introduce to you some of the terms that have been coming up recently. And I feel this is really important because to fight for justice and to fight for reform, we should all be a part of that. Amen? And so, for example, here's one term that you see a lot is Black Lives Matter, right? BLM. I'm sure you've seen signs many places. Many of our second gen are holding up signs, Black Lives Matter. So I strongly support this perspective that Black lives do matter. And I think all of us believe this. And especially at a time when Black lives have been taken, we need to make it clear, especially to those in positions of authority, people like in the position, like police officers who have the potential to exert force over people. It needs to be clear that Black lives really do matter. However, there is another side to this, and that is if Black Lives Matter, if BLM is a part of some political agenda, then before I can support that particular political agenda, I need to know what are they trying to gain? What is that political agenda? So although I am strongly in favor of stating that Black Lives Matter, when that becomes a political movement, I need to know what are the goals and aims of that political movement. So that's what I want to speak about a little bit here. Okay, so here's some terms that you're going to come across. So I took time to read a book. This is a book called So You Want to Talk About Race. It's by a woman named Ijeoma Oluo. And my son recommended me to read this book. So I read this book this last week, and I also read several articles about race that are kind of out there on the internet, that people are reading a lot, that are circulating a lot. And I really tried hard to understand where this person is coming from. Okay. And first of all, I want to state that one powerful experience of reading this book was I realized how much suffering people of color have gone through that I was not aware of. So, you know, we hear about slavery, we hear about the abuse of people of color in the South, the lynchings, and we hear about these different things. But it really is valuable to really hear someone's personal experiences and the small things that accumulate that really bring a lot of pain to someone's heart. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that I really did learn a lot just from her personal experience. And I want to acknowledge that that was a very real experience, and that I think it's good for us to be more conscious of this. Yeah, it's quite important. These are some terms that come up a lot in recent times. Institutional or systemic racism. So this is the first thing I want to talk about, especially you hear the term systemic racism. What does that mean? It means the system, the system of government, the system of laws, the system of governmental policies, that these themselves are racist. Okay, that's what that means. So here's the definition that I found that they're using on the internet. This comes from the Lawrence Report by Sir William Macpherson in the United Kingdom in 1999. And he says, the collective failure of an organization to provide an appropriate and professional service to people because of their color, culture, or ethnic origin. So that's pretty clear, right? So if we fail as a culture to take care of people of color or culture who are different from us, then this is a problem. Then he goes on to say, it can be seen or detected in processes, attitudes, and behavior which amount to discrimination through prejudice, ignorance, thoughtlessness, and racist stereotyping. So why did I underline that? I underline it because the point I want to make is that the incredible emphasis now is all about systemic racism. If you go on the internet, you go to different articles, it's all about systemic racism. It's not about some white guy mistreating a black person. That's not what it's about. The system itself is racist. And the point here is that we have to tear down the system, the government, the way schools are run, the way everything is done has to be torn down and has to be rebuilt from the bottom up. And what I want to make the point is that I don't agree. Based upon my study, I don't believe that the main problem is a problem of race in the system. And in this definition here, we see, so let's give an example of systemic racism. Systemic racism would be something like, in the law, it's written that, you know, if a black person or a brown person goes over the speed limit at all, we give them a ticket. But if it's a white person, we allow them, you know, they can go 10, 15 miles an hour over the speed limit before we give them a ticket. So there would be an example where in the law itself, the system itself is separating black and white or black and brown, and it's favoring white people. So these kinds of laws have been rooted out. It's been a long course, but since the Civil War, these kinds of laws, step by step, they've been trying to remove these laws. Now, are they 100% removed? No. But 99% of all the laws have been rewritten, or they're written in a way that apply equally to white people and people of color. That's why I'm saying it's not really the system. And then in this book, which I read, I looked for her to give me examples of systemic racism. And she gives a couple. And one of them was when she went to get a job, the people who hired her did not like the way her hair was. And they wanted to change the way she did her hair. So I would say that's not really systemic in the system. That, that company she's working for is a private company, and the head of that, the CEO of that company, is making certain decisions based upon his view of how he wants his employees to look. And they have a right to do that to a certain extent. What kind of clothing you wear at work, and such and such. Okay. So maybe that employer is prejudiced against Black people. That could be the case, but that's not in the system of our government. It's not in the system of our society. Okay. But that is, I would admit that is maybe to some degree a type of systemic racism. So that's maybe that 0.1%. Okay. Then she gives another example. Okay. And the other example she gives is when they hold the teacher-parent meetings. When kids go to school each year or twice a year, parents meet with the teacher. And in the school where her kids went, that was during the school hours. And the point is that for many colored people who work hourly wage jobs during the day, they cannot just leave work and go meet with their teacher. So here, this I believe is a really good example of systemic racism that still exists in our system. Now, did people consciously think we want to exclude Black people or brown people, and that's why we're going to have the teachers meet with parents during the school hours? No. They did that because that's when the teachers are at school. That's when they are at work. So I agree. So in this particular case, we can change the law or the system of schools and give people, those who can't come during working hours, they can come on a weekend, or special times can be made in which they would be able to come. So my point here is that, yes, there may still be some unintentional systemic racism that is there, but it's really like that 0.1%. 99.9% of all the laws, none of them are written specifically to separate Black and white, right? Okay, so there may be other examples, but those are examples she gives in this book. She doesn't give any other major examples of this kind of systemic racism that I could see. Now, so the real problem is where? The real problem is in people's attitudes and their behavior. It has to do with the attitude of a policeman or the attitude of a judge, or when a colored person goes to get a permit, that person who's taking the permit may give them a hard time because they have some personal problem, or it may be because of ignorance, because, for example, the crack laws, they put a lot of young Black men into prison. When that law was made, they were not thinking, oh, we want to put a lot of Black kids into prison. They were thinking about how dangerous this new drug was called crack. So my point here is that the real solution is not to tear down the system, but that's what this movement is trying to say to the world. And she addresses this question of changing people's attitudes, changing their behaviors. And she kind of makes the comment that, that's not going to work. That's going to take forever. We can't really do it that way. Okay. So we believe through our true parents that actually we can do it that way. And that the only real solution is to change the hearts of people. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit later. I see time is going by quickly, so I want to go as quickly as I can. Because I want to introduce you to some other points. Okay, whiteness. So a lot of talk now amongst young people about how white people are a race, and that we have certain prejudices as white people. Okay, so whiteness. So you need to become accustomed to this term. All right, I'm just going to briefly go through these points of what whiteness is all about. This is from an article written on white fragility by Robin DiAngelo. She's out there in the internet these days. And there's 6 points. Now these may not apply to you, but I just want to bring them up. Hey, whites tend to do what? They tend to segregate themselves from other races. Whites think they are beyond race, but they don't see themselves as a race. So they don't see themselves as a race. Therefore, race is not something they need to worry about, but other races do. Like black people, that's a race. Brown people, that's a race, but not me, a white person. I'm not really part of a race. Number three, whites assume everyone must have the same privileges as they, right? So we just assume that the freedoms I enjoy and the life I'm enjoying is being enjoyed by other people. We don't really think about other people's predicaments. Number four, whites do not tolerate racial confrontation, being accused of being a racist. It's probably true, right? No one likes to be called a bad name. We're all a little bit defensive. Number five, whites see themselves as superior and other races as inferior. Okay, that may be true to some extent, maybe not. Number six, whites seek to surround themselves with images and messages of superiority, meaning all the heroines are these white women, and all the, in the movies, all the heroes are these white men. And we see white here, white there. All the people who are great seem to be white. That's the point they're making. So I would like to say here that our first reaction may be, as a white person, those of you who are white, it might be very defensive towards this kind of analysis or this kind of accusation. But I want to encourage us to stop and remember. In the divine principle, we believe in collective sin. And I do believe that maybe even subconsciously or in our ancestors, we may have these kind of 6 components to some degree within us. Anyway, I want to make you aware this is an issue that's being brought up a lot now, this idea of whiteness. Okay. Next is privilege. Privilege is a term being used a lot. So certain people have privilege and sometimes they're not aware of it. So for example, the race you're born into, if you're born into the white race, you may gain certain privilege through that. For example, the points I just read, you may not have to worry about race so much. It's not an issue for you. Okay. Wealth is a privilege, right? Some of us have been born into families that have more wealth than others. So that's a privilege we're born into. IQ. Some people are smarter than others when it comes to certain areas. My personal experience, math and science, it came like that. I didn't have to struggle at all. But some of my friends, they had such a hard time to grasp mathematical concepts. So that's a privilege, okay? Maybe your natural ability for music would be a privilege. Maybe your natural ability to write could be a privilege, where other people struggle with those things. How you look is a privilege, right? Some people, they just naturally are beautiful and they get more attention from others. And they're more popular than others. So the way you look can be a privilege. Your lineage, as we know in the divine principle, lineage can be a privilege. If you're born to a good lineage, a good, good family tradition and not so much indemnity to pay, that's a privilege. Health can be a privilege. Some people are born with strong constitutions, and they are healthy. They don't have to struggle with diabetes or all these other things. So this is an important point. And we need to recognize that, yes, certain people have more privileges in many areas. Okay? And our point is, that's not a bad thing. But with privilege, if we need to know it. That's her point here, is we need to recognize that we have this privilege, and we need to realize with it comes greater responsibility. All right? Okay, finally, I want to go back to the passage we read in the Bible, 1 John 3:8 and 9. Everyone who commits sin is a child of the devil, for the devil has been sinning from the beginning. So we have to recognize sin and acknowledge it when it takes place. But then it goes on to say, the Son of God was revealed for this purpose, to destroy the works of the devil. Those who have been born of God do not sin, because God's seed abides in them. They cannot sin, because they have been born of God. And here is the real solution that the Bible gives to us. And that's what we present to the world. This is such an important point. Okay? True parents are the real solution. I talked about before how, she's saying because the racism is in the system, we've got to tear down the system, right? So, this whole thing reminds me when I was young, in high school, going into college at that time. And I was just excited and caught up by the communist propaganda, the speakers on the campus, the articles that were being written, the books that were coming out, the professors were supporting it, and it just looked like, wow, this is it, this is it. And we're going to tear down America, and we're going to make a whole new society. And I was just caught up with this, and I never looked carefully at where it was headed. Then I met our movement, I joined our movement, and then in the years after that, we saw Vietnam fall. America was defeated in Vietnam, and millions of people, literally millions of people, especially in Cambodia, were slaughtered. And I remember, to this day, I have such deep regret and shame over my participation in that left-wing communist effort to bring down America and to bring defeat in the Vietnam War. It's really a painful point for me. In the if America had survived and had been strong in Vietnam, perhaps the whole communist system would have fallen a long time ago. Anyway, so now today I see many young people being caught up in this idea, oh, you got to tear down the system. The system is racist. We got to tear down the system. So we need to stop and look more carefully. True parents say, what? Yes, we have to tear down everything. But what do we have to tear down? We have to tear down the false love that the archangel began in the garden. So true parents recognize this point. Yes, we have to go back to the very root. We have to tear it down to the very root. But it's not about the system of government. You can change the system of government and things will just keep being more and more evil, much worse than before. Because Satan's desire is to destroy America. He's not just out to accuse one cop of killing a black man. That doesn't serve Satan's purpose. Satan's purpose is to try to destroy America. Because Satan knows that if America goes the right way, then God's kingdom is going to come quickly. And you know, race relations, abuse of black people, brown people, has improved markedly over the last 50 years. And Satan doesn't want that improvement to keep going, keep going, keep going. That's why Satan wants to try to bring people to tear down the system. So true parents are saying, yes, we need to tear it all down. But what needs to be torn down is the false love in the family. And what true parents have done is they've gone back to the root. They've reestablished the position of Adam and Eve at the very beginning. And now they are building a whole new lineage, a whole new tradition, culture of heart. And that is the real solution. Okay? So that's what we're a part of. We are bringing the real solution. And we should have absolute confidence in that. And we should be able to say, yes, Black Lives Matter. But I'm not here to destroy this nation. I'm not here to destroy what's been getting better and better and better. I want to help it even become better. So what can we do? Okay. So in conclusion, a couple things here I put up on this slide. Number one, people in public position, they need to be screened more carefully, educated more carefully, trained more carefully. This means we need more money, not take money out of the police department. We need more money, especially with police and teachers. Those are the two areas where the government interacts with people a lot. Teachers interact with children. Police interact with the members of a community. So we need more money so that we have much better training, education, and that we make sure we weed out bad cops or bad teachers. That's what needs to happen. Then we'll see things improve much more quickly if we do that. Ideally, we should send all the teachers and cops to divine principle workshops so that they can see the true heart of God towards everyone as God's children. Number two, we need to listen to grievances and seek out any remaining systemic racism. So it's not our. Sorry about that. Should be. We should seek out any remaining systemic racism. So I'm really happy I read this book. And I want us to really be in a position. And the sermon that was given today on national service was about listening. So we need to be willing to listen. And even though sometimes the words that are spoken to us hurt, we need to be able to digest that. Heck, Jesus went to the cross. Did he complain? Father went to Humnam. Did he complain? So we should be willing to receive some accusations and swallow it and then ask, how we can love that person. And finally, as true parents are teaching, we need to focus and guide this world on the family, how to uplift the family, and how to improve education for our young people. If we do this, if we, through the blessing movement, we can resurrect the family, connect the family to God's family. And if we stress education, as true mother has stressed education for young people, heavenly education, we're going to see racism and the tragedy that has taken place in the last few weeks is going to end. And we're going to really see God's kingdom emerge on this earth. So thank you for listening. I hope this might help you in some way as you look at all the issues and all the things going on around us in the world. And God bless you. And let's really work with true parents to make our country a great country that is really God's country.